I want to welcome everyone to our second webinar. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy days to join us on this info session. Couple pieces of information before we get started. The first one is just a reminder that this webinar is recorded and will be posted on some of our communications channels, website, social media, etc. And the second one for Q&A today, you're going to be muted throughout the presentation. If you're on Zoom, please use the chat function. And then at the end of the presentation, we will be unmuting everyone so that those on the phone also have an opportunity to ask questions and join the conversation. So with that, Nikki, let's go to the next slide. Okay, quick overview of what is on today's agenda. We'll talk about the current public health and phases overview, historic preservation process update that just went through council, resumption of construction, public safety, the 2020 Inspiration Fund, reopening resources, and ongoing project updates. As many of you know, we're currently under a stay home, stay healthy emergency order. A couple things to note, it's continuing through May 31st. And next slide, please, Nikki. And I'm sure many of you have seen this. We will send out the presentation to you guys directly afterwards, which so will also be in here. But just a reminder that we're in phase 1. So very, very limited in gatherings and travel, some slight business opening, but not to the extent that we're gonna see in the next couple of months. And I'm gonna pass it over for the next slide.
Hi everyone, this is Jessa. So since our stay home, stay healthy order, the Pioneer Square Preservation Board has had to cancel review meetings, which means issuing certificates of approval have been put on hold. On April 27, City Council did approve an emergency legislation that allows smaller projects like signage, awnings, and minor facade changes to be reviewed administratively by the Department of Neighborhood staff for the next 6 months. Other projects that are not available for this admin review process are postponed for 60 days. That's from the April 27th decision, so until June 27, or until the Pioneer Square Preservation Board can stand up virtual meetings in compliance with public comment statutory requirements, whichever one comes first. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the Alliance staff. We can help you navigate this new legislation and connect you with the appropriate staff at the Department of Neighborhoods. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah for an update on neighborhood construction.
Thanks, Jessa. Sarah here. So the governor announced a couple weeks ago that low-risk construction projects were allowed to start back up again as long as construction crews comply with the health and safety protocols laid out in the state's COVID-19 safety plan. So what does that mean for Pioneer Square? Next slide, please. So here's a list of construction projects in the district that are currently underway or will be very soon. I do want to flag for you all that the Port of Seattle has postponed work on the proposed cruise terminal at T46 while port staff evaluates COVID-19's impacts to the Alaska cruise industry. Next slide. We know that public safety is top of mind for many of you. Since our last information session, we want to highlight 2 new updates. First, the Alliance submitted a letter to the mayor's office regarding public safety concerns related to the encampment on 2nd Avenue Extension South between Washington and Maine. Secondly, the Alliance has contracted a private security company called Homeland Patrol Division Security. They started courtesy patrols in Pioneer Square on Tuesday night. Security agents are patrolling 7 days a week with the goal to provide a visual deterrence during late night hours. They will report any criminal activity they encounter to SPD and Alliance staff to support impacted businesses. Aside from these 2 updates, we want to continue to encourage folks to call 911 for emergencies, contact the community police team for ongoing chronic issues, and call the SPD number for ongoing drug activity as necessary. You can report litter, human and animal waste, needles, and other sanitation issues to the Metropolitan Improvement District by calling their dispatch center or submitting a request through their online form, which can be found on their website. And lastly, the Find It, Fix It app is also a good place to report illegal dumping and other public maintenance requests to the city. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Chris.
All right, hello everyone. The Alliance is really excited to announce that the Pioneer Square BIA 2020 Inspiration Fund is now open. So the BIA is matching hours and/or funding for community members to implement projects or programs making a positive impact in the neighborhood. We encourage folks to consider and come up with really great and creative ideas. Some potential projects include public art, workforce development, public area improvements, or cleanups. So we're hoping community members will collaborate and come up with a really creative idea. Information about the 2020 Inspiration Fund can be found on the Alliance for Pioneer Square website. And when we send out the slides after the presentation, we'll also have a direct link on this section of the presentation. But the application period opened last Friday, May 1st, and will be open until May 31st at midnight. We're accepting applications for projects ranging from $1,000 to $20,000. There's some more information about the funding or the funding phases in the slide. And we hope to award fundees by July 15th. So if you're interested, you should check out the Alliance for Pioneer Square website. And there's more information about the application and instructions can be found there. I will pass the virtual mic over to Karen to talk about reopening resources that have been emerging recently.
Hi, everyone. So the first one refers to the slide that you saw earlier. It's the Safe Start Washington, the phased approach to recovery, the one that had the 4 columns. So Governor Inslee, working with the State Department of Health, outlined guidance for individuals and requirements for employers. So the next one is the Washington State COVID response new normal planning. So Challenge Seattle and the Washington Roundtable hired Boston Consulting to create some documents to translate those policies that the state made and into recommendations and how-tos for everyone. So they actually created both a full report and some checklists that I think businesses will find really useful. The Madrona Venture Partners also partnered with the Bellevue and Seattle Chambers, and they created a back to work toolkit, which is really good. And then one thing I learned during one of the zillion Zoom meetings, like all of you are having, there are PPEs available for Washington businesses. And I know it's been really hard for people to get those, but that last link, the Best International, if you enter the code WASTRONG, it's not a discount code, but it will give you priority in ordering some of those supplies. So it's very useful. And all of these links will be included in the presentation we send to you later. So take it back, Chris.
All right, thanks, Karen. So this is a slide with some familiar information about some federal and state financial resources for organizations. So just to recap the CARES Act and some of the associated programs underneath that, the Paycheck Protection Program is still active, as well as the Employee Retention Credit and the Families First Coronavirus Act. Shortly before our last meeting 2 weeks ago, the Working Washington Small Business Grant Program reopened with additional funding. So they're estimated to fund 25,000 more applicants. While they're not accepting new applications, if you submitted an application previously, you're in the queue to be reviewed. And additionally, shortly before our last meeting, the Washington Employment Security Department launched a redesigned system, and that is now live as well. If Nikki, you could move on to the next slide, I'd be appreciated. On the local level, these are some more familiar financial resources for businesses. So the City of Seattle's OED, Office of Economic Development Small Business Stabilization Fund received more funding the same day as our last presentation. So we wanted to communicate that out again. It's worth noting that OED is offering technical assistance for businesses as they navigate the SBA disaster loan process. They are taking phone calls and can work with people on a pretty short turnaround time, so just a couple days. And additionally, another OED resource is their weekly webinar, which is held most Wednesdays at 11 a.m. And it's a really good overview and just complements some of the other resources that are out there. On the non-governmental side, the Sounders Ray Foundation Relief Fund is still active. They're currently in their third phase of their grant process, and that is open for a few more days until May 12th. Another non-government financial resource to note is Facebook's Small Business Grants Program, which is relevant to cities in which Facebook has a large employment presence, like Seattle. And one other resource that emerged recently coming from Civilization, the design firm in the neighborhood, is the Shop Small Seattle directory, which is made in partnership with Fold magazine. And it's getting quite a bit of traction. It's a really nice resource for businesses to plug in their information to market to more consumers. And then one additional item that is not on this slide, the City of Seattle, Greater Seattle Partners, and Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce put out a survey about a month and a half ago to understand the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the region's economy. They just released another iteration of that survey today to kind of take another temperature check. And that link will be provided in the slides when we send them out. So we encourage folks to take that to just help produce more data relevant to this crisis. Next slide, please. Okay, and a few more developments for the restaurant and nightlife businesses that came out in the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, Mayor Durkin released a statement ordering third-party delivery apps to cap commission fees at 15%. And yesterday, the Liquor and Cannabis Board released information about pre-mixed cocktail pickups that businesses can provide to customers that have to be served with a full meal, which is defined on the Liquor and Cannabis Board website. And additionally, there's some container specificity too that can also be found on the LCB site. And finally, we wanted to highlight the Washington Nightlife and Music Association and the advocacy that they're doing. So they're asking folks to urge Congress to protect the music industry. We will have more information about their call to action in this slide once we send it out. But they're asking folks to contact the representatives and let them know that you support independent music venues and across this nation, but particularly in Seattle. And so they put together a really easy guide with key points that you can call or you can email to your senators and representatives and elected officials to make your voice known and really support the music and nightlife scene in Seattle and in Pioneer Square. And with that, I will pass it off to Timbella.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So throughout the pandemic, the Alliance has made various communication efforts available to help support the Pioneer Square community and help businesses not only stay informed, but keep up with the latest developments as they happen through regular information dissemination. So one of the ways that we have been doing that is through our COVID-19 update, which we send out every week, and we've sent it out every week for the last 9 weeks with updated resources every week, and also a bi-weekly public safety update outlining public safety reporting guidance, including how to report public safety incidences, who to report to, and citywide resources that are available to the community. So the bi-weekly update is a new resource that we recently added since our last info session, and we sent the first one out last week. Another resource we have made available is our Pioneer Square Business Owners and Managers Facebook online platform, to offer businesses and business owners an opportunity to reconnect, to share resources, and to support one another and collectively navigate this period. So right now we have 63 businesses represented on that forum, and we are still inviting businesses to join the group and to leverage this space to connect with one another. A link to the group will be included in the slides that we send out with this recording for anyone who wants to join. And then in our last info session, we mentioned the launch of our online marketplace to help businesses generate revenue through online sales, and also to provide an online presence for those who did not have it. We have since plugged in analytics onto the site, and we have been tracking some performance data. So on average, we have 900 plus users each week, with takeout and delivery representing the most traffic on the site. Currently, we have 61 businesses that are registered, 90 products listed, and 21 restaurants offering delivery and takeout. And we are still doing some targeted messaging to get more businesses to register and list products on the site. We're still running our Support Pioneer Square campaign with targeted web ads, Google search ads, and social media ads. Collectively, with all three, we have had over 2.7 million appearances on the web, with an engagement of over 7,000 clicks, posts that have been shared, comments, and reactions. So we're also measuring the success of the campaign by how much traffic it is driving to the Pioneer Square Shop Local marketplace. And right now, 66% of all users that are referred to the site are through the campaign. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on some messaging that we've been doing around our storefront mural project. So we've been sharing it on social media, on all our social media platforms. We've been sharing it in our newsletter, and we have been uploading the murals on both our Alliance and Pioneer Square websites, and have had lots of engagement and interaction with that type of content, mostly on our social media, which is great. And then this week, we added an interactive map on both websites so that people can take a virtual walk around the neighborhood to the different mural sites. And with that, I will hand it over to Sarah, and Sarah will elaborate on updates on the mural project. Thanks, Tambella. So as many of you know and may have seen in the neighborhood, murals have gone up in response to businesses and properties boarding up during this time. We want to thank the BIA, Pioneer Square Residents Council, and individual donors for creating paid opportunities for Pioneer Square artists to paint so many of the district's temporary murals. To date, there are 31 murals completed and 7 are in progress. We're currently working with a photographer to capture photos of the murals across the neighborhood, so that's really exciting too. I'd like to show you just a handful of completed murals in the district. These were funded by the BIA, Pioneer Square Residents Council, and through donations. So the first one, Nikki, please move along the slides there, thanks. The first one is at Kinesia Pilates, and the artist is Aaron Ustra. The next one is Gallery Arado, and the artist is Crystal Barb. The next one, this is Flatstick Pub, and the artist is Jay Mason. And Jay Mason also did this piece next door on RPM Pizza and Manu's storefronts. This one is on the Grand Central building on the South Main Street side. The artist was Rick Clue. This is at 118 First Avenue South. Artist is Lance Lobazetta. This next one is at Fuel, and the artist is Mary Ann Carter. And this is the last one we have for you today. This is the Butnick building on the South Washington facing side, and the artist is Paul Nunn. So these are just a handful of murals in the district. You can view a more complete list through an interactive map on our website, like Tambella mentioned. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Lisa to wrap up our presentation.
Muted. Okay, unmuting. All right. Well, thanks for everyone for joining us today. We're going to take some time for questions. Just a reminder that we will send this slide deck out with some of the links filled in for you guys early next week. And as always, you can also reach out to us direct to any of us directly, or also to info@pioneersquare.org if anything else is on your mind. Okay, Nikki, do you want to unmute, and just so we don't get talking, well, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so I don't know where so basically I was just wondering if MIDI, are they still working the streets? Are they still sweeping and cleaning? We, on 3rd Avenue between Yesler and Washington, it's looked pretty rough, and same thing with right over by by the Washington Shoe where the Starbucks is and everything. We've been sweeping up quite a bit there, but I could use a little help. I don't know if they're still doing that stuff.
So Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the MID is operating from, I believe, 9:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. I think it, go ahead.
9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Monday through Friday.
So 9 to 1:30 Monday through Friday. If you see direct, or if you see stuff immediate, go ahead and call them. And also, I think it might be worth doing an introduction to some of their leadership with you and the MID team to get some attention on that. I know.
Oh yeah, I've met them. I know
Okay.
I know some of the people. I've got cards and numbers down down at the garage, but it's been more about. I know our street hasn't been hit, so maybe I just need to make a call. And a couple of them were parking with us for a little while. We were doing free parking for the Harborview Clinic there, and so we haven't had any business really. But the street, you know, people are like pooping on the street and all that kind of stuff, and it's not. I think there were 30 or 40 needles just thrown on the ground yesterday. It's not getting picked up. I don't know if MIDI's supposed to be hitting the street. It's always kind of hit and miss whether or not that street gets hit, gets cleaned. Anyway, you know, I know sometimes they miss it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I will say they're operating at a little bit less capacity right now. They don't have all their ambassadors out there, and so it's really important, especially now, to make calls as soon as you see issues like that so they can get addressed.
Right on. And then my other comment was with the crime side of it. We've had quite a bit of crime actually at our parking garage. We've been broken into probably half a dozen times. They've stolen everything from our time clock yesterday to our square readers and everything else. They're in and out quickly, either following customers in who have 24-hour access. So that's kind of on us. We got to have our customers do a little bit better job, but also climbing up the fire escapes in the back or standpipes or whatever. And I mean, I found some of the stuff that they steal around those tents over in front of the old Mason building. I'm just curious if I've talked to some police officers who kind of insinuated that every day I talk to that they're sort of de-policing right now. And I'm wondering as a community if we can maybe encourage them to not do that.
Yeah, and I think there's some issues throughout the entire system. It's not just on the policing side. There's also the back end side of the criminal justice system is also seeing a little bit different processes than there's been in the past. We have been advocating for the city to address the encampment on Second Avenue Extension specifically because of the criminal activity that's been happening, including a number of shootings. So a couple things. One, for your break-ins, have you ever been introduced to our community police team rep? His name is Officer Ryan Keith.
I don't know that I have. I mean, there's quite a few officers that I do know and I have talked to, but.
So their role really is to address kind of ongoing issues. So wanted to introduce you to him. And the second one is it's definitely worth taking 5 or 10 minutes to email the mayor's office and city council regarding the impacts of the crime on your business. I know it feels fruitless, but
you said the city council, right? I mean, the mayor's office. I could see some benefit there. I do not see any benefit. I mean, I don't see any benefit with the city council, but the mayor's office maybe.
So part of sharing your story and submitting it is so that they do hear the other side of it. I know it feels fruitless. I know, but it's, when they only hear one side of the argument, they never know the other impacts around the city.
That's right.
If we don't ever get that through to them, we're never going to see any change with that. And so that's why I keep encouraging you to email city council.
And I will. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I wish there wasn't a more immediate answer. It's just a little bit harder than some of the other
right on.
things.
Thank you.
Sarah, did you have another?
I was going to say, we can also connect you with the crime prevention officer for the West Precinct. Her name is Barb Biondo. She was on the call a couple weeks ago, but she is happy to help you look at your site and improve any conditions that would help from an environmental design perspective, deter crime. So that's another connection I'd be happy to put you in touch with.
I appreciate any help. I don't know. I don't really hold out a lot of hope. I kind of know where. So I've been down there for 32 years, 33 years now, and so and crime goes up and down. But it really, when we're kind of hard on it and we're kind of pushing people out that are causing the crime, it helps us a little bit more. And when we let them move in, they do. And I'm sure most of us know, but the tents in front of the Mason Furniture are the same group that was in front of the what is that, the new building that's being built there right across on the other side of the Union Gospel Mission, and it's just it's a crime setup. Union Gospel Mission knows, they talk about it, and they're just stealing drugs and prostitution out of there.
Barb is on the call. Barb, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, hi. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was anyone else from the department on the call or not, but I do have a few specific things about the garage. And then just I had if you wanted a quick update, it sounds like everybody's pretty aware of the state of affairs, but I could provide that as well.
Please do, Barb. Sorry, I didn't recognize your number on there. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about the garage, but in general, yes, burglaries are up in the neighborhood, although they're not as far as we have seen in other beats. For some reason, South Lake Union is just really getting hammered. But it's also, as you all probably know as well, it's a citywide, regional, and national trend. There was an article in the New York Times about this, about closed businesses and repeat burglaries. But I will say there is no depolicing going on that I am at all aware of. In fact, at a meeting this week, Captain Allen was talking about how, we're very aware of the Second Avenue encampment, the extension encampment, and the issues stemming from it. Our community police team officers are spending a lot of time. That's Ryan Keith and his sidekick, we call him Don Little. But they've been spending a lot of their free time in Pioneer Square. And the captain's having the patrol officers in that sector do directed patrols, which means when they're not on a call, they're down in that area and supposed to be making contact. So if you're not happy with the work you're seeing on the street with our officers, please let us know. That's really, really important feedback for us to have. But, you know, they are responding. Our response times actually are very good for Pioneer Square right now. We did make 2 arrests recently, burglaries related arrests. And then the other thing I'll add is that it's important to report crime. And then also if you have any evidence, video evidence in particular, to share with us, because our detectives, they're tying together, they're working around the clock, tying together these repeat offenders who are hitting multiple places. And they're stacking up these, they're able to stack up cases. So video evidence is really critical if you have images like that, that you know, get them to us as quickly as you can, because the detectives will put out bulletins to patrol officers, and then patrol officers, you know, a lot of times will already know it'll be a familiar face to them. So it does help connect the dots, you know, and this is all on the police end. This is what we can do. We can go out and apprehend and deter crime by our presence. Of course, what happens on the other end of that arrest is something we don't have complete control over, or any control over. But that's where you all, you know, I'm glad to hear, Lisa, and all the proactive work that you guys continue to do in Pioneer Square. I'm sure that will only help. The only other thing I would add then is just in general, you know, encouraging people. I know you're going to have your own security patrolling out there, but you don't want the community to really, you know, we still want community members to be our eyes and ears. You know, we are responding, we are making arrests, and a lot of times it's the person saying, hey, there's someone, you know, breaking in that business across the street, and they're making those calls to us, and you know, that gets us out there. So, you know, I know we're doing the best we can with the resources we have. I know there's a lot of frustration at the same time, especially around, you know, what appears to be a link between the encampments and crime and other issues. So I'll just, you know, I say I understand that very well. But in terms of the garage, I could talk offline with, was it Mike? I'm sorry, Mark. I missed the name.
Yeah, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we've met, but yeah, definitely I can connect with you and give you Ryan Keith's phone number. You should touch base with him, because there might be some other things he can recommend. And then especially if you're seeing familiar faces and there's a back and forth between the camps and the burglaries that you're experiencing. There's also trespass contracts. If you're not signed up for one, Ryan can help establish that. And then lastly, myself and my team, we do security assessments of any kind of facility or building or you name it. So we're happy to come out and take a look and see if we can help you out that way.
Okay.
I will send an email after this and introduce the 2 of you if that works for you guys. Okay.
By the way, it's the police officers are always great. I mean, we recovered 2 stolen steel garbage cans from a tent encampment a couple of days ago on Monday, and you know, parking enforcement helped me, and they had stolen them. They'd cut the chains that were holding them down, and then they had built fires in them, so they were having a fire there, and so. So anyway, they helped me recover it. That's all the way. It's you know, it's not the police officers are not the problem at all. It's just the will to go into those tents and say, hey, those guys are dealing drugs, and you know, I wish a council member would come down and watch for about an hour.
Well, can I add one more thing? Before y'all mute me up again.
Yeah.
This is Barb. So we've been having these, the West Precinct co-hosts with the MID, we call our Downtown Security Forum. We've bumped up our meetings now to doing them, you know, every other week, you know, given the situation we're all in. And so we just had one this week. We'll have one again on the 21st of May. And we are inviting Council Member Andrew Lewis. So hopefully he'll join us. But I know the Alliance always has someone participating in that meeting. I just wanted to, hopefully we can get Andrew Lewis to attend and he can hear from some of his constituents directly.
Thank you, Barb. We're going to leave you not muted just in case other people have questions. So just know that since you're on the phone. If anyone else has questions, you want to raise your hand. Eric, Nikki's going to get you able to talk. Thanks. There you go. Go ahead.
To Mark's point, actually, I was curious. I've encountered the parking police a few times out on Occidental Mall, and they've been pretty harsh. And I rent a space from Mark, and I don't put it on him, but every time I park there, there is poop and needles and broken glass. And our bar manager got his car broken into. You walk up the street, there's glass all over the street, basically every block. I just don't understand why they choose to enforce so strictly parking in areas that in a normal time you're not allowed to, which is understandable. But now I can't park out in front of my business in the mall, so I have to park down the street around the corner and walk there after serving food all night and after dark, and it doesn't feel safe, So I'm just curious, like, why they put so much emphasis on patrolling parking in that zone and in other load zones when there's really no business currently happening except for few and far between, one of which is mine, where I don't want to feel more unsafe than I already do. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely hear you. And I think for one of the things to remember, and this isn't justification or good reasoning, but they're two different systems. So like Barb, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things about the encampment right there is that the encampment right now and some of the secondary activity that you see with that is that there's different CDC guidelines for moving encampments that the city is dealing with. And so, which is much different than maybe the parking enforcement operations is dealing with. So I think we're just seeing this mismatch that's happening. But we'll definitely take the mall parking enforcement conversation back to SDOT, because I think it's, they were trying to figure out a system that works for people. They implemented the free parking, trying to keep what traffic there is still moving. And so we can definitely take that back to them and talk about how they're approaching that, and if there's any leveraging, like, leeway in those rules over the next couple months, for sure.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I don't mean to get into the details, but it is also a little bit frustrating that we are all met with such resistance from parking enforcement that they have like zero sympathy and like don't understand the situation at all. They just say, get out.
Yeah, well, and I think Barb, you can also jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but the people that you're seeing on the ground are given orders to implement protocols, and they're not really given the leeway to make those judgment calls necessarily. But I think for just to maybe attempt to tweak the rules so that they're implementing what makes a little more sense for businesses, specifically on Occidental Mall, like, we can take that back.
Sure.
But
okay.
Hang in there.
Yeah, I'll just add, this is Barb again, really quickly. Lisa's absolutely right. The parking enforcement folks, we know that, SDOT relaxed some of the rules, and so they've got their directive and they're following it. I know you can take those tickets and go to court and, I know that's time consuming, but that might be an option. But I definitely recommend what Lisa's doing. And, if there's particular impacts, if it's not a fire zone or something like that, there might be something where, bring up the safety concerns, and that might be something that can get addressed through SDOT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Good. Well, we'll send out the presentation today. Please give us a holler if you need anything at all or just want to talk. And I think we'll wrap up a little early, give you a couple of minutes. And oh, forgot to mention, sorry this coincided with the flyover today. We didn't mean to do that. That was at 1:30. So, okay, enjoy your weekends. Please let us know if you need anything, and we'll talk to y'all soon.